What's up guys, and welcome back to On the Brick with another LEGO review. Today I have for you set number 75290, the Mos Eisley Cantina. This is the latest set in the relatively new Master Builder series. It contains 3,187 pieces, comes in this wonderful 18+ box, and if we take a look at the top of the box, you can see that it contains a total of 21 minifigures. We are going to go through all 21 minifigures, but we're going to be focusing on the exclusives. Also, apologies for the weird lighting, it's a little difficult to show a box this big in my current setup. But the back of the box does show you that you can in fact open up the cantina. It also shows you the dimensions of the set when opened. It shows you the Han and Greedo scene in A New Hope and recreated in LEGO, and then a bunch of the other minifigures just there at the bar. And of course one of the vehicles. Now I have a lot to say, so let's jump right on into the minifigures. The first 4 figures we get are Luke, Obi-Wan, R2-D2, and C-3PO, and despite these being easily 4 of the more prominent characters in this scene, none of them are exclusive in any way. C-3PO and R2-D2 are the same that we've had for a while now. Luke is the same as the one from Obi-Wan's hut and the land speeder, and Obi-Wan is the exact same as the version that came in the Death Star canon set. Still look good, of course, I'm not going to complain about that. And it does make sense that they are the same versions from those sets, but I do want you to keep that in mind. In fact, here are those figures next to their respective counterparts, just so that you can see there is literally no difference between them. The figures on the left come from the Cantina set, and the figures on the right are their respective counterparts. Again, I do think that they look good, but I was a little hopeful they would have some exclusive printing or something. Also, one thing that I wanted to point out was that my lightsaber for Luke came a little off-colored. It might be a little difficult to see, but the lightsaber is a little scratched up and grimy. I put the other one there so you can compare it and see how it's supposed to be shiny. But I am absolutely not complaining about this. I think this is really cool to have. This lightsaber looks like it's been in a chest on Tatooine for 20 years. So absolutely not a complaint, just something that's really cool and I wanted to share. The next 4 minifigures that we have are Chewbacca, Han Solo, and of course 2 Sand Troopers. And just like the last 4 minifigures, none of these guys are exclusive at all. We've had all of these guys in different sets, including recent Cantina sets, which is part of why I'm showing all 4 off at the same time instead of going individually, because honestly there's nothing too special about them. Again, they do still look good, and I do like the detail on the Sand Troopers. I'm not too certain how I feel about the new helmets quite yet, but overall the design is fine. Up next are the 3 Bith members who make up the Cantina band. All 3 of these guys are exactly 100% the same, with the only difference being the instrument that they are playing. In fact, they are exactly identical to the previous version of the Bith that we got in an earlier Cantina set. However, I do still really like these guys. I love their design overall, and I'm really happy that we got 3 of them. But it is a little misleading when you go into the instructions and see a picture like this showing only 3 band members. It's never really explicitly said here, but this picture implies that there are only 3 members. But in reality, there are not. In fact, there are 7 members of the Cantina band. However, in bag number 10, when you are actually building these guys, they do list every single member of the band, so I don't think LEGO was intentionally trying to mislead people with the image of the 3 of them, but I did want to bring that up, as seeing that picture and getting only 3 members didn't quite seem like a coincidence to me. Now don't get me wrong, even though I would have loved to get all 7 members, I fully understand why we didn't, and I'm happy that we got 3 of them. I still would have liked if one of them was a little more unique, so he could be friggin' Dan, which is the leader of the Cantina band. But then again, I do love the design of these aliens as a whole, so I'm just not gonna really complain about it. And in the last of our non-exclusive figures, we have a normal Jawa, Greedo and Wooher, I'm not exactly sure how people are saying his name. I have always called him Wooher, and I've always heard him be called Wooher, so I'm not entirely certain why there's confusion there. But if you know, go ahead and type it down in the comments below. The Jawa is the same Jawa we've gotten in a bunch of sets before, and Greedo and the bartender both came in an earlier version of the Cantina set as well. It's actually kind of weird just how many different versions of the Cantina set we've gotten already. And if you've been keeping track, that means that out of the 21 minifigures, 14 of them, or 2/3 of them, are repeated figures we've had before, which is definitely something that needs to be said, but we'll get back to in just a second. But when it comes to the exclusive sets, there are 2 figures we absolutely had to get, and I'm so glad they are included. I'm speaking, of course, about Dr. Evazan and Ponda Baba. I have also included the Devaronian Labria. Printing on Dr. Evazan's torso is pretty mild, but I love that they accurately portrayed his face here, and it looks really good. I've heard some people have issue with Ponda Baba, but man do I love the mold for his head. This is a figure I have been hoping to get in LEGO for a long time, and I'm so glad we finally do. And with Labria, I'm not really that big of a fan of how they did the horns on top, but I do love just how shiny and nice the torso looks. None of these 3 are really super special or have any printing that's just outstanding, but they are wonderful inclusions to the set, and I would say they were necessary to include. I mean, I think a lot of people would have been a little upset if we didn't get Ponda Baba and Dr. Evazan. I do have to say again that I think Labria's head isn't really the best. In the movie, his smile looked very sinister, while here it just looks like he's happy, and the horns are a little too far apart, but I'm being nitpicky if I start going into all that. And if we go on to the final 4 exclusive minifigures, you'll see 2 species we've seen before, but not these 2 characters, and 2 new people entirely. Starting with the Ethorian in the red, we have Moma Nadan. He actually has a really nice design and even has some toe printing, and as it spins around, you'll see that they even added some color to the back of his head. To the right is Cabe, who is a small female Chadra fan. They have a much more basic and simple printing scheme, and have the original short legs, unfortunately not utilizing the ones that can actually bend and move. And I don't want to seem too cynical here, but again, I don't really think the way they captured this figure works all that well. I know it would have been more expensive to do a custom mold for their head, but it probably would have captured the original look of Cabe better, as this kind of just looks off. Then we move on to Garendan the Imperial Spy. This is probably my favorite figure included in the entire set. Even though their printing is extremely basic, I love how they did the head, and it's wonderful to finally have a minifigure version of him. If I wanted to be extremely nitpicky, I would say that the eyes are a little too small, but look, I'm not even gonna go there. This figure looks perfectly fine. Even though I do want to mention that I'm not really sure why he's included in the Cantina set, since he shows up after the Cantina, but look, again, I'm not gonna complain. I'm happy to have him. And lastly is the Trandoshan, whose name is very difficult to pronounce. Kalfas or something like that. It kind of sounds like someone just hit their keyboard. I love the design of this character. I love that we got this mold for their head, and even though the printing on their torso is once again pretty basic, it does look really good. And look, I'm not very good at LEGO's colors, so I think the pants are pearl silver. I'm probably wrong there, but they're really shiny for some reason. But overall, this figure is pretty good. Now, like I said a few minutes ago, out of the 21 minifigures, only these 7 are exclusives. Now, on one hand, saying that only these 7 minifigures are exclusive isn't really fair, because there's not many other sets in which you can get so many exclusives. This is a set designed both for its play value and, of course, for its minifigures. It has an 18+ rating on the box, meaning that it is aiming for an older audience. And at a $350 asking price, I'm gonna be that guy that says we should have had more. I'm not gonna be the guy that says that every single figure should have been exclusive, but when you think of the Cantina, there's a few things that come to mind. You think of Obi-Wan and Luke fighting Ponda Baba and Dr. Evazan. You think about how it's the first place that they meet Han Solo and Chewbacca. There's of course the famous Han shot first scene, but I'm willing to bet that when most people think of the Cantina, they think of how it's full of all these random and exotic aliens. So yeah, it's really great that we got Ponda Baba and Dr. Evison. I love those guys. But I'm also a little disappointed with 2 of the exclusives, as I personally don't think that they look that good. The hard to say Trandoshan is a little bland, but does look good. The Ethorian and Garendan are excellent figures that I am happy to include. But for a place that's supposed to be full of exotic aliens, it's a little disappointing that 2/3 of the figures we got are repeats of things we've already had. I don't know, maybe I'm just expecting a little too much from what's clearly supposed to be a collector set aimed at adults. Anyway, I've spent 10 minutes talking about minifigures, so let's move on. The first thing you build in the set is actually this V-35 Landspeeder, and it's the very first time it's ever been done in LEGO. It was actually a really fun build to put together, and it holds very, very well. Fortunately, we're not really provided with many pictures of the actual designs, but from what I've seen, it does look pretty accurate, and I do need to say that there are a lot of stickers on this vehicle. I'm pointing them out here as we go along, but I do want to reiterate something that I will probably say in every single collector set that I review. Stickers should not be a thing at this price point. I understand that there's a lot of stuff that goes on behind that, but again, this is a $350 set that is targeted at adults. I know some people out there won't agree with me, but really, stickers should not be a thing at that price point. These need to be printed. People can throw out whatever argument they want for that, but I don't think many people are going to disagree with me. The stickers don't look bad by any means, but it's more that price point that is the problem. Anyway, enough rambling about the stickers. You can actually fit the Trandoshan into the back of the vehicle here, and you can fit Labria or really any other person in the cockpit, but you can't have them sitting up, otherwise this happens. And if you have them leaning back, it still doesn't really go flush all the way, not at first at least. I had to really push this thing down. I'm not sure how they or anyone would be able to drive in this position, but the vehicle as a whole does look really nice. We are also given a second vehicle, which is this thing, and this one is Greedo's ship. We've also had this before in a previous version of the Cantina, and it's nothing really that different or anything too special. It's a pretty basic build that's pretty quick to put together, and it looks fine. There are a whole lot of stickers on this thing though. It's literally stickers all the way around. And the only good thing about that is that the majority of the stickers included were on both of these vehicles. Now you can actually fit Greedo inside of this and it will close fine. Overall, this was a pretty simple build that, I will say I liked. And though not a vehicle, you are given a dewback as well. There is a brick-built saddle for him, which I think looks really nice. They did put a little bit of thought into this, meaning it's not just like, here's a few bricks and you're good to go. And if you want, you can fit a stormtrooper on it and have him riding around. It does come with whatever this stick is as well. One thing I saw on Instagram though is that for some reason, the dewback in this set does not have printed upper teeth. It does have printed teeth on its lower jaw, but nothing up there. And if you're wondering why that's important, it's because in previous iterations it was printed. Of course, this isn't a deal breaker or anything like that, but yet again, I want to bring attention to that $350 asking price and the 18+ rating. It's not something that I personally really care about, but it is something that I wanted to throw out there. Anyway, here is the actual Cantina build. Finally. I know, 13 minutes into reviewing this thing and we've just got to the actual building. I love this thing. I absolutely love this. This was a fantastic build that was a lot of fun to put together. Even though it's a lot of tan pieces and you might think that the interior boots would get repetitive, it really doesn't. They designed this in a way that really mixes up how you're putting things together, so it's never really that boring. I even love how they added some extra stuff outside of the cantina, like the watering hole for the dewback or the moisture evaporators. Are they evaporators? Is that actually what they're called? Point being is that I absolutely loved what you actually see here before you. Like I said, there are additional things added to the outside of the cantina, but thankfully you can just remove them extremely easily if you want. This moisture thing is on a single Technic axle. The dewback watering hole has a little more connections, but it's not too difficult to remove at all. And then if we turn it slightly, we get to the front of the actual actual cantina itself. It's actually kind of weird because while this is a pretty large set, it's probably smaller than you might think. And before I start going into the extreme details, I am gonna tell you that I'm not gonna be that guy that goes through all like the chairs and this and that and everything. The inside of the cantina is a pretty basic build. It looks really good, it looks wonderful, I love how it looks. But if you've seen the movie, then you know it's pretty simple. That's not necessarily a bad thing though, because it is accurate. Now speaking of the entrance of the cantina, I did have a small problem in that my door won't open all the way. This is supposed to be able to slide up all the way, but for some reason it won't. It was a problem I noticed immediately upon building this part, to the point that I actually took it all apart and then put it back together, and it still wouldn't open. And I'm not entirely certain why, as the design doesn't make sense for it to be getting stuck. Personally, I'm not going to be playing with this, so I don't really mind, but I did need to point it out. If we flip to the other side of the cantina, you can see that there is another moisture farm there, along with like a storage / junk area that just has some boxes and miscellaneous items. I actually really love the look of this area, even if it's pretty hidden most of the time. Oh, and for the first time in a very long time, I had a missing piece. In this little random thing here, I was supposed to have another one of these modified plates. Unfortunately, I didn't. Thankfully, it's not really that important at all though, and is easily hidden. And just to talk a little bit more about my point on the doors earlier, this one is built in the exact same way and it slides open and close no problem whatsoever, so I really don't know what the problem is on the other side. If any of you are having the same issue, please let me know, because I kind of am curious about it now. Now this set does open up, so how do we do that? Well, the first thing you need to do is remove this little roof area that just slides right on out. It literally just sits there. In fact, if I go handheld for a second, you can see that there are like 2 resting areas here for it. It doesn't clip into anything, it just sits there. And while we're here, this is what the inside of the cantina looks like once it is closed and has no minifigures. If you look at the stairs, you can see where the separation actually is. And like I said earlier, this is both really big and surprisingly small, and that's only going to be more noticeable in a few minutes. Anyway, if you want to open this thing up, all you have to do once you remove the roof is literally just pop it open. It's extremely easy. If I show you from the other side, you can see exactly where that separation happens, and again, it just pops right on open, no problem at all. The entire set hinges around the bar, which I absolutely love as it makes it the main focus of the set. But to get a closer, more proper look at everything on the inside, I am gonna have to break the fourth wall a little bit. And there we go. Welcome back to the middle of my living room. And this is the cantina when it is fully open, and again, still with no minifigures except that one guy. If we take a closer look at the bar itself, boy do I love this thing and how it looks. Man, does this look exactly like the bar at the cantina. They nailed the look here. I love how shiny and pristine these pieces are. I love the use of certain pieces here and all the different liquids that you can see and everything. This really is what we see in the movie. It looks so good. And also, yes, this little door at the side does open and close if you want it to. One thing I was not able to find an answer for though is that in these cabinets back here, there's a bone inside, and I don't really know why, so if you do, please do let me know. So you can fit Wooher right on inside here and have him ready to serve all sorts of red, yellow, and clear drinks to people. I also want to say that I would have loved if one of these cone pieces had like an IG-88 printing on it, but that's fine, that would just be like a pipe dream, no pun intended. Anyway though, if we look at this bar from a top-down perspective, you can see that there's not really that much room on the inside. There are plenty of plates to position your figure on, so even though it is a little bit of a tight squeeze, overall I really love how they did this. If we move on, this is the entrance to the cantina, and well, there's not really that much to see from this perspective. You can see that there is plenty of room for figures in there though, but from this side you can't see too much. So if we flip it around, you can see that there are some chairs in there, and this little thing is the droid detector detector that stops R2-D2 and C-3PO. These are both stickers, of course, and I think everyone would agree that it was a necessary detail to include. Now, one thing that I like is that you can fit figures by trying to stick your hand in there, or you can open up this hinged dome at the top and put the figures in that way. While doing that in this particular area, it proved more difficult than I thought it would be. It is much more useful in other areas of this build. And this is what I was talking about a little earlier, in that, well, even though there's a lot going on here, there's not that much to talk about. This corner booth here has two well-designed chairs, a nice looking table, some drinks, and a cup, of course. And for some reason, there's like a small table thrown in the way in front of it there. It's a good looking area, but it's not something I need to spend forever talking about. However, I do want to say that this is an area that's very difficult for someone like me to get a figure into, which is why I love it that they made it so you can take the roof off. This is actually what that area looks like, and it's so much easier to slip the figure in. And then the roof slides right back on and sits flush with the rest of the set. Moving on, this is another very simplistic booth. I'm gonna be honest, all of them are very simple. This one does not have as extravagant, if I can, of a table, but it does have a shelf on the wall. You can see some of the lights on the wall, but again, this is pretty much exactly the same with just some minor differences. But I did want to get a slightly lower angle so that you can see there are even windows built into this that really do look wonderful. Even though I don't have too much to say about all these things, I do want to express that this is an extremely well designed set. In fact, both of these booths are pretty much the same, again, just minor aesthetic differences, but it's those aesthetic differences that make them not really boring to build. And just like the corner booth, you can actually take the roof off and fit figures inside quite easily, and I'm so happy that they did that because it makes changing things, rearranging people so much easier. On the other side of the bar, we have this little back room here that's a little difficult to see because of both my setup and how it is. We never see this room in any material at all, ever, and so it is completely made up by the LEGO design team, and I loved what they did with it. It's a little back storage room holding a few more drinks and liquids. And though it's really small, they did a good job cramming in those details and making it look nice. Just like the other side, you can open this dome if you want to and put figures inside. I personally have not. Next to that, though, is a very recognizable stage where you can put Friggin' Dan and the modal nodes. Doesn't Friggin' Dan sound like someone got really mad? You know, that like they were like, who's your leader? And the guy just goes, oh, it's Friggin' Dan, come on, he's still not here yet. And then they just wrote down Friggin' Dan, and there you go. Anyway, this is why you only get 3 figures, because this is actually a very small stage. And thankfully, with the ability to open the roof, I was able to put in the 3 that came in the set, along with the one that I already own. But as you can see with the 4 minifigures, it's hard to see the ones in the back, and it's really pushing it already. There's just simply no way to add more into this area. So even if I went and bought 3 more bits to complete the band, I could not fit them in here, which admittedly is a little disappointing. And if I go into this next booth, you'll see that I actually had another missing piece here. That yellow 1x4 brick is supposed to be a tan 1x4 brick, and it just was not included. This was the first ever time that I had 2 missing pieces in a set. Hopefully this one was easy to replace, and it's not really that noticeable, so much so that I actually forgot about it while filming and only realized now while editing. However, this booth is a little special as the seats are slightly different. If we look at them from above, you can see why. Some Technic stuff going on here that connects to these levers on the outside. And if I move these levers on the outside, you can see that they lift up the pieces in the chair. And that is of course because this is the booth where Han Solo and Greedo fight. And so if you want to accurately portray what happens, you can easily flip that thing in the back and boop, there goes Greedo. But for some weird reason, they included the same mechanism under Han's chair, as if saying that Greedo shot at him or something. But if you want to shout McClunky and change history, you can do that now. Kind of looks like Han had a headache and is looking at the ceiling. Finally, there is one more tiny booth in the corner. This is the smallest of any of them. Just like every other spot, you can open up the ceiling to put figures inside. It's very easy to do, but I'm going to put Chewbacca Chewbacca standing on the outside of it instead. So that's what this set actually looks like. That's what's going on here. There is a lot, but at the same time, there's not really that much to talk about. A lot of it is just repeated or similar things. And this is part of why I said it was rather empty, because this is almost every single minifigure that was included, and you can see that there's not much here in terms of occupants of the bar or, you know, anything like that. I do get that the idea is for you to fill it with minifigures you already own, but in regards to what comes with the set, this is kind of what you get, is a half-empty cantina. Want to emphasize again, the build looks fine. You just can't fill it with what's provided. And this is where I still have to wonder if LEGO knows who the Master Builder series is for. As I've said so many times already, this is a $350 set that is targeted at an 18+ audience. And I don't really know many people over the age of 18 who are gonna open this thing up and start playing with it, with the exception of people who have younger siblings or kids. But the reality is, the type of people who are going to open this setup like this to play with it and have that room and everything are not the same people who can afford a $350 set. Because to me and the people that I know who bought this set, it's going to be on display mainly. And if I wanted to recreate the scene of Dr. Evazan threatening Luke, I can do that here easily because of all the room provided. But if I want to take those same figures and add in Cave and put it how this set will look when it's on display, well, I can't even close it. The figures literally get in the way. Of course, if I force it, they'll pop right out, but yeah, that's kind of a problem. If we take another look at this area from above, you can see that there's only 2 studs between the bar and everything else. And one of those studs is blocked by this tube going all the way around, meaning that really you only have one place to put your figures around this bar, because otherwise they're standing way too far away at one of the booths. The one time we see Cabe in the movie is her getting a drink from the bar, but if I want to recreate that, I literally have to have her arms fully up. But if I want to recreate that very well-known scene that I can do while it's open, there's just not that much room at all to do it here. I can put all the characters in here, but it doesn't have that same effect at all. The area around the bar really needed to be just slightly bigger, even just like one more stud wider on each side. Right now, I can't even have the characters facing each other. They can all only be at the bar or at a booth and nothing in between really. And to further the point of it being empty, this is pretty much every figure that was actually inside the cantina. And the booths are still half empty and half the bar has no one around it. Like I said, the point is to fill it with your own figures, but still. But overall, I do think that this cantina here, what you see before you here, is perfectly fine. Okay, not perfectly, because it definitely should have been slightly wider and maybe just slightly bigger overall, but I think this is a good display size. I'm very, very happy with what I have before me here. Even with those problems, I really don't mind that much because I'm not going to be opening it up at all. Maybe if one day I have kids of my own, of course, but right now, no, this is going to be sitting on display as it is right here. I'll even throw in this vehicle. I really like how this looked. Greedos is okay, but I'm glad that we got it. I think it's a nice addition to the set, and all of this here is fine. But even though we're 27 minutes into this video already, I want to tell a quick story. See, years ago, I watched the movie Poltergeist because one of my good friends asked me to, as I had never done so yet. I'm not the biggest fan of horror films, but it was enjoyable and I had fun watching it. This was 5 or 6 years ago, and for a reason I'm about to talk about, I've never seen it since then, so I don't remember all the details or that much of what happens in it. But I do remember some of the important things, and there's a moment in the film where everything just starts to build up and it gets really intense, and it captured me and I loved what I was seeing. It was like 20, 30 minutes of this really intense movie. It culminates in this really exciting climax before things are solved. And then there was still 20 minutes left in the movie. And to me, it felt like the film was already done. It felt like there didn't need to be more, but there just was, and it kept going. And what was a great movie that I really enjoyed ended up just puttering out and kind of just being there. And that's how I feel about the inclusion of these two buildings, because the Cantina building was a perfectly fine build of its own, and I really enjoyed it and was happy when it was done. But despite the set being called the Mos Eisley Cantina, you still aren't finished yet. And while these two buildings are fine on their own, I really don't think they should have been included. First one you build is this 1-bedroom house thing-ish. The outside looks fine. I love the details that they have here. It does feel like something I would see in Mos Eisley. There's no door on this one for some reason, which is a little weird, and if you flip it around back, it's not even complete. The backside is wide open. You can see some of the stuff they included in there. There's a bunch of tools and a cup and a stove and whatnot, and of course a backpack. You can open up both roofs this time, and when we look in, you see, well, there's not really anything else. Sure, there's a box, barrel, and another backpack on the right, but if this is supposed to be a house, then where's something like the bed? Where's anything else other than boxes and tools? Again, the outside looks fine, but this is a huge drop in quality from the cantina we just finished building. And then we go into this other building, which is supposed to be like a shop. I also like how this one looks. I think it looks like something I would see in Mos Eisley. As we turn it around, you can see that this is at least a full building with a door that opens and closes. There's a small window on the front for people to do their business through, and some junk and whatnot on the side here. I do like this printed box here as well. That's really cool. If you lift the dome and open up the building, you can see, well, there's not really anything inside this one either. One side literally has the door, a gun, and a broom, and the other side at least has a little more with the chair and a shelf and some things there. But again, at least this one's a full building. It does look nice, but it really should not have been included. I will talk about why in just a second, but first, you can actually connect these two buildings. You can see that there are these clips and points here, and they slide right in together. Unfortunately, there is only one way to actually do that. You can't even rearrange them, but the actual process is very easy. Also, seeing this, I did buy Obi-Wan's hut, thinking that maybe it would be able to connect as well. Unfortunately, that's not the case. Obi-Wan's hut does have some clips on the back of it for some reason, but they are either in the wrong direction or too high to be connected. Now, if these buildings had been made with at least that in mind, I would definitely still care, but at least it would be a little better. But also, as I break the fourth wall again here, they just get in the way. They really kind of take away from a good display piece. I know some people are going to say that this isn't just a display piece, but again, it is. Even if you are able to open up this set and play with it, which is perfectly fine, some people aren't going to do that, and even those who do eventually are going to close it, at least to store it, and that just became a little unnecessarily more difficult because of the inclusion of these two. It clips right on in, but it juts out so far. So this is the entire set together, and look, I get it, this here looks fine. Overall, this looks fine. This wasn't called Mos Eisley, this was called the Mos Eisley Cantina, and the actual cantina part of this build is great, and it's perfectly fine. It should have just been what we got. Would have reduced the price a little bit more, or instead of that, maybe add an extra minifigure or two. And these little buildings are fine, but you know what they really should have done is, instead of just Obi-Wan's hut, they should have had Obi-Wan's hut with these buildings and released like a $100 Mos Eisley set. And while that sounds like a lot and isn't something that I would necessarily be okay with, do remember that was the intention with the Assault on Hoth set. The idea there was that you would buy the Assault on Hoth and be able to complete it with other sets like the AT-AT that was out at the time, or would have been if Assault on Hoth wasn't delayed. And so that's why I think there should have been like a $100 Mos Eisley set to go with this, and just leave this as the cantina alone, because it took what was a really fun set, what was something I really enjoyed, and then kind of just made it limp to the finish line. As I've said and will always say, the cantina itself is great. I love how that turned out. Even though it's a little too small, I don't mind. The vehicles and and the dewback are wonderful inclusions. And that's what this should have been. And finally, after 33 minutes, those are my thoughts on this set. I know I said some things that people won't necessarily agree with, but I do want to make it clear that I did overall enjoy this thing. I bring up my opinion on things like those of the minifigures or the additional buildings, not necessarily as complaints for this set, but more as a hope of things to see in the future. In my opinion, this set is not worth the $350 asking price. However, even saying that, I still would recommend getting it if you want it. The reason it's not worth $350 isn't because it's a bad set. It's not worth $350 because it didn't need to be. Yes, there are some rather large pieces here, and I'm not going to take that away. I have 3 full domes, a lot of large plates, even the dewback. I fully get that. But there are also a whole lot of very small pieces in this set, or very basic pieces that don't cost a lot. And if you take away those 2 buildings, this set should have cost maybe $325, and that's still including the Star Wars tax. So if it was at that price, I would easily recommend this every single time. But that is going to be it for this. Maybe we can keep talking about this in the future. Please do remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and a huge shout out to all of my patrons who help make videos like this possible. If you're still watching, please do remember that the giveaway is going on for 1 more week. Thank you so much for all your time today, and I will see you next time.